Hello and welcome to Spurs Kings TV. It is Tuesday. I'm your host Marlon, and it's time for Ashmatic Analysis. However, this week I've given my co-host a week off because it is his birthday. So everyone who watches this back, please leave a comment wishing Ashmatic a happy birthday and make sure he's back next week. So this week he is missing. However, so I thought, who could I get on to help me co-host this week and, bring people over, and he's got some views on him. So I made the phone call. I put out the bat signal. Who did I call? Sava, are you well? And thank you.
You are more than welcome. I'm sorry, Ash. It's big up. Thanks for having me. I've just seen that there's currently a YouTuber right now that has got a live show about me called Another Spurs Fan Twerks for Arsenal.
Oh, geez.
And it says if it walks like a gooner and talks like a gooner and twerks for the gooners. I mean, are we grown-ups or what are we doing here? Like, because I went on with Northside earlier, who's an Arsenal channel. I went on with Northside. Oh my god! Wow. Anyway, I'm sorry.
It's time to be Spurs again.
Right now.
Time to be Spurs.
I've just seen it this second, and I'm like, another Spurs fan twerks for Arsenal. It's like, what? Because I said on an Arsenal channel that I didn't like Ange. Like, what are we doing here? Like, I'm embarrassed. I really am. But thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this. Love you so much, man. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you for coming on and helping me out tonight. However, I knew I was bringing you on, and I thought, crap, I'm going to need some backup here, right? Because yes, I agree with you on some things and I disagree with you on others, but I thought I can't do this by myself, especially we're going to talk about Ange, and there's certain things and stuff where I'm completely quite separate to where you are and where I am. So I thought I need to get some backup and people to back me up tonight. So first of all, I thought I'd bring Cole. Cole, are you well?
Yeah, how you doing, Marlon? Yeah, good to be on. It's an honour to come on your show with you boys, and looking forward to chatting all things Spurs tonight. And when you say backup, Marlon, I'm not sure you called the right man, to be honest.
Well, I did think that, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to have to bring up some more. But I thought, let me bring on someone who's been doing the previews for us on a Friday before games at the moment, and people can see them on our channel. They've been excellent. He breaks it down for both teams. And actually, if you saw Fridays against Ipswich, he kind of broke it down to say that actually what Ipswich could do to hurt us, and he was quite spot on. So it's going to be very interesting going forward if people need to start listening to you, Cole, my mate.
Well,
Anyway,
you won't always get some sense, Marlon, but it'd be nice.
will be. So I thought, do you know what? Who else can I call the bat signal to? And I thought, you know what? I had a guy on a few weeks back, and I thought he could help me out tonight. And I thought I'd give the signal to Liam. Liam, are you well? Oh, your sound's gone. Hold on, you muted. Check your mic.
Always good start. Yes, thank you for having me. Yeah, in terms of backup, well, we'll see. I don't know sort of their opinions so much at times. So yeah, I'm interested to hear them sort of from a fresh perspective. But yeah, we'll see. But yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem at all. And then I thought, who else can I bring on? Because actually, to be honest, some Spurs fans have been hiding this week. They have been hiding. Even like some of the comments I've been getting on the Irish Hotspur channel. And I'm like, I wish I could bring these people on, but they're just hiding this week. So I thought, you know what? I know someone who will help me out here. And let me give a good welcome as well, making his second appearance on the channel. Sam, are you well?
Well, I wish it was under better circumstances, Marlon, but thanks for having me on. Lads, it's a pleasure to meet you all. Happy birthday, Ash, and let's get into it.
Let's get into it indeed. So, my first question of the night is, so obviously we've had 2 games since me and Ash last streamed, and we were talking about a lot with Galatasaray, and there was actually a big heated debate, and actually me and Ash got really heated about who should be starting and who shouldn't. Now, I said he should have gone with his first team. Ash was like, no, you have to rest. There's certain players that need a rest. And I said, I'd rather sack off the Ipswich game than sack off the Galatasaray game. And at the point, and we were talking about Solanke as well, whether he should start or not. Cole, I'm going to come to you first. Was he after both games, and obviously hindsight is a wonderful thing, was he justified to make the changes he did in Turkey?
Well, I think it's that balancing act, isn't it, Marlon, where you are having a say with someone like Solanke because he's going to be your main man all season. At some point, you have got to give him games where he can have a rest. So I can understand the choice that he made, and ultimately, I didn't think Lancashire did that bad. He scored a goal, then had his little rash moment. But you have got to make some changes. I don't think anyone, like as you said, it's easy to look back with hindsight, isn't it? I don't think anyone thought the performance was going to be as bad as that with the team that he'd put out. But it does make you question why, when you go away from home, do you be that attacking in the midfield areas when you know there's a high likelihood you're going to be under a lot of pressure in a hostile atmosphere that we know Spurs can't always particularly cope with that with a soft underbelly. So I wouldn't say I blame him, but I think what it does show is when you take key first team players out of this side, there is nothing in terms of squad depth that can come in and play anywhere near the level of those main men that you're going to pick on a week to week basis in your big games.
Sam, I want to bring you in. So obviously, as I said, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Cole saying there should have been changes. Were you one of those that said there should have been changes, or were you like, it's Galatasaray, look at the quality of their team, we should be taking our first team out there?
I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of with Carl, to be honest. I thought, we started the Europa League really well. So I would be okay to almost sacrifice the game. I didn't want us to lose, obviously, but I thought we would get by pretty well with that team that he put out. It was pretty much the exact team that I would have gone with. But then I do agree with you about the midfield. It was very attacking and young in a very intense and hostile atmosphere. And the players knew from minute one they were in for a game pretty much, and it's just unfortunate how the game played out, and that so many players decided that they actually didn't know how to pass a football, and it kind of just never really got better from there until we did bring on the big guns, and then it kind of just makes you laugh when you go and then put a performance in against Ipswich like that after you have sacrificed that game, and now we just look like we've got egg on our faces.
Liam, again, I'm going to start with you as well. Are you in agreement with Cole and Sam as well? Where obviously I'm not. I've already told you what my opinion was, and I'm in the sense of we're going to Galatasaray. I think what everyone failed to looking at is, let's get this group wrapped up early. This was my opinion, because actually, if you don't wrap it up early, and now what we could be in the predicament with Rangers and Roma coming up, which are quite difficult games. There's 2 games in January as well, which you kind of hope that's when you want to rest your players with the FA Cup rolling around the corner. So where do you sit on it? And after I've just given you explanation as well.
Yeah. Well, I went into this game with the impression and thought process of I'm happy to rest players, much like what's already been spoken about. Around rotation was required, and the main reason for that was because of the accumulation of injuries that we were seeing within the squad. We were seeing obviously Van der Ven getting injured. Obviously, Son had his injury. I do fear the squad is being pushed to its limits. Certain players are getting a lot of minutes. Some players obviously are getting rest as well. Looking at the team he actually put out, I don't think it was a bad squad. If you look at some of the players, they would have started for us last season. Yves Bissouma started, James Maddison started, Porro started, obviously Son started, Brennan Johnson starts. It wasn't a weak side. I thought it was interesting giving Son a start, to be honest. I'm not sure whether or not that was the right game to start him in. I maybe would have brought him on personally, but given that our position in the group and the table, I think we were 3rd at this point, and now we're down to 7th, I believe. I didn't think it was a bad time to rest some players. However, the performance, regardless of who we put out, should have been better than what we showed.
Sava, come on, someone's got to agree with me on this panel, because I looked at it, right, and they had, let's be honest, probably one of the hottest strikers in Europe playing against us, right? So you obviously was going to be going against Fraser Forster, Dragic, who's barely played a minute this season, and Ben Davis, right? You had Gray at left back, who, for me, there was a massive argument last week on this channel where he's not a fullback. Don't know why he's playing there, right? So what is Ange doing there, right? And Pedro Porro, and I'm going to be totally honest because I'm going to bring this up when we get to the Ipswich chat. Most of the goals, if you look at what we've conceded this season, are coming from him and Brennan Johnson's side, right? So I heard what the guys are saying, but actually, when you look at it in as the bigger picture like that, and they've got Dres Martin and Icardi playing, what are we doing? If this was a Champions League game, would we be asking for players to be rested?
Yeah, look, I think it's really interesting. Look, you're right. If it's a Champions League game, we're not going to rest players. I do take the points of what people have said earlier, that players that were out on that pitch, Ibasuma, he's a first-team player. Let's not get bogged down that suddenly we've only got 2 centre mids that play week in, week out. Basuma's played loads of times for us in Ange's first team. James Maddison, all right, he's dropped out of favour the last couple of weeks, but this is a first-team England international that's won FA Cups. You know, he's been part of a very good Leicester team. Look, for me, I think the worrying thing more than the team selection, look, I would have gone full strength. I think that when we all looked at, and so, apologies, I'm an Arsenal fan, right? So I'm just coming at this from an Arsenal fan perspective. Sorry, I've just been sitting there quietly trying to wrestle in my mind as to whether or not I retaliate or be the bigger man. But I don't know if I am. Look, back to this. For me, when we all saw those Europa League fixtures come out, I think to a man, to a woman, to a dog, to whatever, we all looked to that and went, Galatasaray away, that's the tough one, right?
Yeah.
I reckon we did, right? We said Roma's going to be tricky at home. Rangers isn't quite Rangers of old. It's going to be Galatasaray away. For me, I want to see the best 11 put out there to say, right, this is your first test in Europe. With all due respect, Karabag, Ferencvaros, AZ Alkmaar, I expect Spurs to be we could put out a younger team and win. I just think that when you get to Galatasaray, test yourself. Put your first team out there. See how ready they are for that away European game. And instead, what we've got is people saying, oh, it was a free hit. I don't think it's a free hit. A couple of slip-ups and suddenly that free hit suddenly doesn't look like a great idea. For me, more than all of that, Marlon, what I was really disappointed about is that we went to Galatasaray, a very tricky place to go, with very tricky forwards. I mean, look, Osimhen, let's be fair, most clubs in Europe would love Victor Osimhen up front. And I think most of us are really shocked that he ended up at Galatasaray on loan.
Of course.
But when you've got that, when you've got that and you've got the tricky wingers that they've got, don't you adapt your tactics a little bit? Don't you say, right, we're going to Turkey. This is tough. This is hostile. First 20 minutes, sit in. I'm not talking about 10 men behind the ball, but just sit in a little bit. Keep a solid shape. Have 2 midfielders that hold rather than one and then Bergvall and Maddison. I just thought that he got all of it wrong on a night where it was a real good chance for us to test ourselves. Now we're going to win the games that we should be winning against the lesser teams, and everyone will go, oh, we're favourites for Europe. But I think that game there showed that, you know, we brought on a lot of the better players second half, still looked absolutely dreadful. I think he got it wrong from everything. Everything. I think he got the whole thing wrong. And what's more embarrassing, and I'm sure we can all agree on this, and I'm sure we won't agree all night, but surely what's more embarrassing is that we rested those players for Ipswich and then gone and put in the performance we did against Ipswich. For me, you've got an international break. Put out your best team in both. You've got an international break coming up. Put out your best team in both. Is the last thing I'll say, I'll hand back to you. I'll sound like Mr. Box Office now. Last thing I'll say, and I'll hand back to you is, can't believe it. I'm just watching him on the show. Do we think that European games away from home at teams like Galatasaray is the right time to be giving the youngsters minutes? I'm not blaming the defeat on the youngsters, but for me, I just think that's completely irrational. I don't know. And listen, he got it wrong, and he got it wrong Sunday. So it's not the best week for Tottenham Hotspur, should we say?
Carl, I'm going to come back to you because obviously you said about our midfield as well, and obviously probably when we look at the whole team, it was our midfield that had the most amount of minutes that have been played this season. So they, and they've probably been the most consistent team in the first team. But going back on Sava's question, was it the right time?
Not to play the way he did, when also, as Savas rightly said, the biggest thing here is it's adapt your tactics. When you know you're going away to a difficult place where you might not have a lot of the ball and you're going to come up against a really good side, there are times where you are going to have to say, right, as Savas rightly said, sit in, hold your shape. Let's start seeing this game out. Let's quieten the crowd down if we possibly can, and then we grow into the game from there. And if we're taking control of that game, then we can maybe start being a bit more expressive and a bit more expansive. But until then, it's not the worst result to come away from here with a point. So that's not going to do anything silly. And I just think playing the way he did with those three in midfield, especially when you consider the week before against Villa, he'd kind of played two that were more of a holding two in front of that back four, to then switch it up and go, well, let's just go attacking in against the team as well that have had a blistering start to the season, scoring goals for fun. You should adapt and say, we need to do what we need to do to get out of here, at worst with a point and nothing less. And I'm sure we're going to discuss it tonight. That ultimately is what in the end I think will cost Ange his job at the club.
Sam, I want to quickly bring you into it because obviously you said it was justified you was looking for some changes and justified to make them. However, we got to half-time 3-1 down and he makes a couple subs, but he still leaves players like Lancashire and some of the young boys on. And obviously Lancashire goes and gets sent off. Do you think that was more down to the frustration for the way the team was playing? Or do you think it was just something silly that he did, and maybe he should have maybe Ange should have protected these players, especially these young players, in such probably one of the hardest grounds that you're going to go to in Europe?
See, admittedly, I actually, before Lancashire got sent off, I wasn't worried about him. I'd actually said in another stream before the game, I wondered if Lancashire would start the game, obviously knowing that Ritchie had gone down injured against Aston Villa, and that Solanke had literally run his nuts off for 3 games in a row. That City game and that Villa game, he worked so hard to the point where he could hardly stand up anymore. So I wasn't too worried about Lancashire until the sending off. But the problem for me was pretty much from minute one, pretty boy Bergvall, as much as he looks like he can be a great player, he looked really out of sorts. And, he wasn't doing, in my opinion, anything correctly. I'm not trying to get on the case of a young player, right? But this is about us as a team. And I felt like Ange not making that sub to take Bergvall off at halftime really cost us in the game, personally. And he didn't actually take him off until like 70 minutes or something. And I just really thought, Maddison wasn't exactly covering himself in glory either, but the two of them in there, as Sava said, they just weren't working. And considering how much he's started to trust Sarr again in recent weeks, it made sense to get someone with legs on in there to actually take hold of the midfield, because they were playing very well, Galatasaray. And let's be honest, aside from Osman missing 8 sitters, they could have genuinely beat us 8-9-1 or 9-2.
Sam, don't you think this was almost the best 3-2 defeat we've ever had, in terms of it genuinely could have been 10. And I know sometimes as fans we overreact and go, oh my God, we should have been battered. But that game was like pinball in our penalty area, wasn't it? It was madness.
Honestly. And I think Hoddle said it the best on the commentary. He says, the other commentator said, they've had 27 shots up to this point, Galatasaray, and Hoddle said, yeah, and 21 of them have come from Tottenham mistakes. And that's just how the game went for me. We just made mistake after mistake after mistake. I mean, what can you do about their first goal? You know, it's an absolute wonder strike.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sit there and go against both.
I saw
I'm
you
gonna
say
sit
this on
there.
Last Word on
Yeah,
Spurs.
I'm gonna sit there and go against. If you look at where he puts it, he doesn't put it top corner. Vicario saves that, by the way.
Yeah.
So this is where I'm going with the whole first team incident. That goal does not happen if Vicario's in goal. Nothing against Foster. He's just slow and old, right? But this is for me again going back to this is what happens when you play your second string side, right? In certain games, because like everyone had a look and there was a picture on Last Word on Spurs when I was on it, and you saw where the ball went. He literally has his glove to it, but he moves so slow that he doesn't get to it. And I personally think, no matter how the strike was, a decent goalkeeper, and I'm going to say decent, right, saves that, and we don't go 1-0 down. So there again is me like, and I know when I was on Last Word on Spurs, he thought it was only going to take a minute, but no one's gone back and watched that and left any comments to say I was wrong.
I don't necessarily disagree with you, and I think
Yeah.
that maybe I'll upset the goalkeepers union with this comment, but
Yes, you will. Come on.
I think that goalkeepers should be able to play every game.
Yes. Yeah. I do agree with that.
You don't necessarily need to drop Vicario in these matches, I don't think, because a lot of how we play as well, you know, we haven't been conceding that many chances. Admittedly, we're still conceding off our first shot, basically on target, but we're not actually conceding that many chances where I'm thinking Vicario's had to have a really tough game where he's been battered and bruised other than from corners and set pieces. So I kind of agree with you in that sense that like he probably could have played Vicario in all the games. And again, with Sava, we had the international break coming up. And if Vicario is so tired, he's about to sit on the bench for 2 weeks for Italy. So it doesn't really matter that much.
Liam, I quickly want to bring you in before we move on to the main topic, which is Ipswich. Obviously, the sending off happens, and Spurs suddenly get together. They bring on, let's be honest, the first teamers, and suddenly get the result that kind of saved us from embarrassment, and we're kind of on top. Would you say that this was a clever tactic by Ange, or was this the card he was dealt because of the whole situation with the sending off and how badly we were playing?
Let's be quite honest here. It couldn't get any worse. I think we were all thinking this. Like we could have conceded 10. Like I said earlier, it was quite frankly appalling. I wanted Fraser Forster gone this summer. He just isn't the guy for our system. Our system relies on, firstly, a keeper that can actually sweep. Forster cannot sweep anything. He's very slow. I don't like him being goal. The only thing I actually quite like him for is crosses, which is so ironic with Vicario.
Yeah.
Obviously struggles with the crossing aspect. In terms of the cards he was dealt, I think Will Lancashire, this was probably, obviously there might be a different one, but it's probably the biggest game of his career so far. Going away to Galatasaray, starting alongside probably some of his idols, which could be Son, and obviously seeing James Maddison as an England international. It's probably his biggest game of his life to this day, and he's probably very hyped up, quite frustrated, maybe wasn't getting enough of the ball. I think Solanke, though, as a team, Solanke, what he does, it's just so good, is he makes other players around him better. And I think that's why we've seen the output from Johnson in the Premier League, that he makes Johnson perform. So, yeah, I guess we could say, Ange improved it once he brought on Solanke, but honestly, I didn't think it'd get any worse. I was watching that game like, this is disgraceful. Was it? I can't quite remember the name of the team where we got a red card, where Radu got red carded. Was it Faros or
Carabag?
Carabag, that's it. Yeah, we could have conceded in that game. If you look back at it, I know we won, obviously, and kept clean sheet, but we could have conceded quite a few times in that game. They had quite a good few chances, and I guess it was covered up by the actual victory in the end. But at the end of the day, we do concede a lot of chances at times, especially, obviously, we were down to 10 men in that game, but yeah.
I think as well, Marlon, on that point around the so-called comeback in that game, we have to remember that was against a Galatasaray team that I think knew they had that game won and took their foot off the gas and took their foot off our throat. and ultimately, if they kept the playing to the same sort of level they had been, they probably again could have easily scored more. But I think at that point they thought the game was won. They took their foot off the gas a little bit, and we then finally got ourselves into the game. And that's what makes that, as Sava said, that 3-2 result look like it wasn't as bad a result as it was. But that was just a travesty, that performance, and one that could easily have been so much worse.
So, I was warning everybody saying if we had lost to Galatasaray, right, and as people were telling me, it wasn't going to affect the first team. It wouldn't have no impact. We could go, as Sava said earlier, it was a free hit. That's what we were told. Sava, we get to Sunday, that free hit and that justification, and I warned everybody because I said, right, and I'll go back on this, and there was two teams I mentioned, especially in my review to the Irish Hotspur. I said Manchester City played a half their youth team players and half their first teamers right against us. Haven't won a game since. Aston Villa made 10 changes against Crystal Palace. Haven't won a game since. Defeats affect first team players no matter who's in the team, right?
Yeah, I think they do. I think more than that, though, Marlon, it's about, sorry, everyone knows my favourite word, it's consistency.
Yep.
If you're doing well and getting good results, players don't want to be rested. And this notion, I feel like, again, sorry, I'm going to show my age here, but this notion that every football fan thinks that players can't play 2 times a week. Listen, when you look at all the greatest teams in the world, Lionel Messi played week in, week out. I never saw Lionel Messi sit on a bench. Ronaldo was never sitting on a bench. Mo Salah never sits on a bench, right? This notion that everyone needs to be rested because they played on Sunday, but we've got a game Thursday. I don't get it. These are athletes. I get it. Some people aren't going to be as fit as others, but do you need to make 7 or 8 changes for a game? I just feel like it completely loses any sort of fluidity that you've got, any rhythm. And football's all about the M word, isn't it? It's all about momentum. And for me, I look, first of all, I just don't think our squad is anywhere near good enough. But again, but Eugene, the players dropping like flies. Look, if the players are dropping like flies, first of all, have they been dropping like flies? Let's be brutally honest. I don't think there's that many. I mean, Richarlison, what does he do anyway? Odegaard, we don't know what he is. We're talking about Van der Ven and Romero, if we're going to be brutally honest. That's all we're talking about, Van der Ven and Romero, aren't we? Unless I'm missing anybody really obvious. But when we're talking about players dropping like flies, listen, at the end of the day, this is why when everyone said that the transfer window was great and we didn't need to sign players, and Ange just come out and said, I didn't want any more defenders, and Ange just said, I didn't want to buy leaders, I want to grow them. This is what makes all of these stupid things he said are going to come back to bite him. Because what our fans don't understand, Marlon, is we did this last year. Right? We did this last year.
Don't quote me.
No,
I did it. I did it. I was one of them.
A season is a very long time. Yeah. For me, rotate players if you've got players to rotate. Don't just rotate him for the sake of trying to get young players minutes. And for me, again, if we go back to that Galatasaray game, I don't think that Bentancur, Basuma, Sarr, between them have played enough football that you couldn't have played 2 of them in Galatasaray and then another 2 against Ipswich. I mean, we'll come to Ipswich in a minute. I don't think you should need them for Ipswich, but for me, why a sensible manager would have gone, we're in Turkey, right? Basuma, Bentancur, pick your poison. Basuma, Bentancur, just sit in front of the back 4. Let Maddison go and do his number 10 stuff. Sit in front of the back 4. Tell you what, Johnson, drop 10 yards, sit in front of Porro. Son, drop 10 yards and protect Gray. Let's just keep it compact. But we didn't. We didn't do that. We went, we went crazy. So for me, you've got to keep momentum. Big up sack of potatoes. Thank you for full naming me. Just needs my middle name there, doesn't he?
Show some love to Sava tonight, mate. Everyone show some love to Sava.
Mate, I'll be honest. I mean, sorry, I'm in shock. I genuinely don't know what to do. But look, the last thing I'll say is this. I don't think that the players have been playing enough that we need to rotate every game. He's been rotating for every European game, right? These players aren't playing 2-3 times a week. Why couldn't you have gone to the toughest team in the group and left that first team out there? I just don't get it. I said it at the time. The problem is we're getting to the stage where whatever Ange does, whenever we lose, the excuses for this man are piling up. There's an excuse for everything. Top managers don't get those excuses. Look when Pep messes up, everyone loves it. Why do they love it? They want to knock him down, right? When Ange messes up, other teams are laughing at us. They're laughing at us because, again, we've shown that we're not ready. We're talking about being the favourites in the Europa League. I think that showed the other night that we can easily be got at and we're not the favourites, in my humble opinion.
Liam, I want to bring you back in because obviously Sabbath said something there that you kind of mentioned earlier, saying that injuries. You said about injuries and stuff like that. So I want to bring you on that. So you've heard Sabbath's point on, especially with international break coming up, right? Which is like next week. Did he really need to go to Turkey? And especially with the rotation that we've had in the Europa League, did he really need to go to Turkey and make that many changes in that? Now you in hindsight and you've now seen it all, and obviously the way we started against Ipswich, we started exactly the same way as we did in Galatasaray.
I guess in hindsight, you can always look back at it and say it's inexcusable. Then going out and losing to Ipswich, and I guess losing that momentum, I 100% get that argument, and I get your point of okay, who's actually missing, and yet we have Van der Ven. Obviously, Van der Ven is very crucial to Ange's system in general. Obviously, Romero picked up an injury. Obviously, Sonny picked up an injury that's obviously recently come back. And then Odogi, obviously, I think he had some issues at some point. I do genuinely believe that rotation is required, but I also think that I get your point of the international break coming up. I'm not sure whether or not it's just the way he likes to play his players or try and introduce players into the team. But I was thinking about this recently, actually, how I would try and integrate players into a team. And I would more like to see starting the starting squad and bringing on players when we can. And for example, Archie Gray actually being played in his position in midfield and having an impact off the bench as opposed to maybe having to start an Archie Gray out of position. I 100% get your point. I think it's maybe just the way he likes to manage, and we've seen that he wants players out there to solve issues, and I guess that's the way he wants to create leaders. As you said earlier, he wants to create his own leaders, and I guess that's why he's leading them out there to solve those issues. It's hard to defend something.
Yeah. So Liam, just on that, do you think it's the wise idea to do that, to create leaders and go down the route that he's going down at the moment? Because we're now, 14 months in?
Sure. I think we have seen leaders come out of this side. For example, I think Kulusevski is stepping up as a potential leader in this side. Obviously, Maddison was signed and basically made vice captain instantly. I think Vicario is also emerging as an influential player within the group. Do I think it's conducive to the overall squad that players are basically left out there even though they're not having a good game? No, I don't think it's good for results, honestly. It's hard to defend that. But at the same time, I do think that I think the balance in the team was wrong. Don't get me wrong. But I also think that players had a lot of individual errors. For example, Radu, I've never seen such a bad performance in terms of a passing performance from a centre-back. Maybe that's because the midfield wasn't showing for him. I'm not quite sure. From that midfield, what I can see... Bergvall holds onto the ball far too long. We know that. We've seen that. He gets tackled a fair bit. Maddison holds onto the ball far too long. Same with Bissouma. So you get three players that generally hold on the ball too long in midfield. I don't think it's conducive, and I don't think it gets you results. But then again, he sees them on the pitch every day. He's the coach, and at the end of the day, I have to leave it to him to make his decision. He makes his decision. He lives and dies by those decisions. And I'll judge at the end of the season sort of how that goes.
Sam, want to bring you in on it as well. Like, obviously, we started against Ipswich very slow, very timid, very tired. As Liam said there, the substitutions as well. He'd rather see first team out and then let blood the youngsters in, because we've got Archie Gray playing at fullback. Look, that Ipswich game couldn't have come at a better time for Spurs, right? And everything that's going on at the club right now. But where do you sit on this whole episode of the leaders on the pitch? Do we have any at the moment? Are we showing any? Because Liam's mentioned Kulusevski there and a couple others. But where do you see this whole lead? Because everyone's been moaning about leaders at Spurs, and you find a lot of people on social media and on YouTube and whatnot have said we have no leaders.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of lean towards that as well. I think I give Son more credit than other people do. Is he like your conventional hard man captain? No, but I do think that he's the kind of player that leads by example. And maybe the system or it doesn't quite suit his play anymore as he's getting older. So it's harder for him to lead by example, and maybe that's why he's getting a fair bit of criticism. But I just think that you don't necessarily even need leaders in a system like this. I'm sure we'll get into it in more detail, but I saw the stats saying that Porro lost the ball 26 times against Ipswich. And I mean, basically from minute one, his crossing was some of the worst crossing I've genuinely ever seen. And I'm not trying to use any sensationalism. It was genuinely awful. So why is it so difficult for a player taking corners to think, oh, Muric has come for every single ball that's landed near the 6-yard box? I'll tell you what, maybe I'll play it a little bit deeper and go away from the goalkeeper so that we attack it from deeper, and the goalkeeper has to either make the decision to come further out of the goal and flat for it, or has to leave it in general, because I didn't think it could get any worse than Maddison's corners this season, and Porro up the level even further for me. So it's just about having players just use their brains for once, rather than just being robots to what they're asking, what is being asked of them. Actually taking a bit of initiative and being a leader in themselves, rather than having a set leader on the pitch that does it.
Do you think we have any that can do that, or the players that Ange likes to sign are more robotic and are going to listen to the way he wants to play, instead of having someone, let's throw someone out there like an Eze who's going to produce something completely different?
But then the players like Porro that I mentioned, not all of these players are Ange's players, right? I'm talking about your Porros, your Romeros, who I think just, it might be his style of play, but he just takes too long on the ball. When we're actually looking to play it forward, he might have a great pass on him, and every few games he might play an unbelievable ball over the top that we don't quite capitalize on, and that's not his fault. But there are certain players in there, especially the ones in the leadership group, that should have the ability and the mental strength to be able to actually influence the games with their own leadership. It's all well and good Vicario shouting at players, and some people might say that is a bit of leadership, giving the players a bollocking when they need it, right? But I agree with Liam. Other than Kulusevski, I don't really see anyone actually show that initiative to take the game by the scruff of the neck like an Eze would. Even watching Chelsea the other day against Arsenal, I was just looking at Pedro Neto thinking, God, this guy, the way he takes on his fullback is just everything that we need in a winger. And, we basically, Brennan Johnson basically plays as a shadow striker, and then our fullbacks invert. And I just think that sometimes, if Porro, I know that Ange wants him to invert, but if Porro just played his natural game to drift out to the wing at times, we actually could get some balls in to players attacking the box. And that's where Solanke thrives for me as well.
Cole, I want to bring you in, and then Sav, I want to ask you kind of the same question. The goals that we're conceding, right? And I've kind of noticed this, and I don't know if it's just me, but I notice a lot of it is coming from that right hand side. I don't know why. I can crosses coming over to the box. There'd be someone missing. The overhead kick. I think the overhead kick just summed up exactly what I've been thinking for weeks, but just didn't have the proof to say it. And I think now it's getting along, and everyone has mentioned it. It's individual errors and this, that, and the other. But Porro and Brennan Johnson, a lot of mistakes seem to be coming from their side. And I'm going to include Romero in this because actually it seems to be the three. So it's everything on that right. Is there something going wrong? And why hasn't Ange seen what's going on wrong on that side and corrected it?
Well, I think the biggest problem we've got, Marlon, is we've got a back four where no one actually lives and breathes defending. You've got a back four where most of those players are primarily more interested in what they're going to do going forward and in the attacking transition of a game. No one dies for defending in our team. Like, who's putting their body on the line and just saying, listen, whatever happens here, we don't concede in this game. And I think that's part of our biggest problem. The whole back four, Doggy, not a defender, likes to go forward, can't defend. Porro, exactly the same, likes to go forward, switches off, easily out of position, caught out in defence. Romero again switches off all the time and drag us in from what I've seen from him so far. And I said to you in my Ipswich preview, I would rather have seen Ben Davies play there than drag us in because he has looked dreadful in most of his appearances so far in a Spurs shirt. And that's the biggest problem. And like as we say, Ange hasn't been able to spot this, which is a worry, and be able to actually go and do something about it. And we saw in that Galatasaray game as well, how many times the Tottenham defenders get caught out ball watching and not watching where the forward's gone. And all of a sudden a cross comes into the box. It's gone over one of their heads and suddenly it's like, oh, there's a striker there. Oh, what? And he's in on goal now. Oh, where'd he come from? It was like, he was with you all the time. You just weren't aware and you weren't looking at him. And as I say, you weren't dying to not concede a goal. You know, you look at all the great teams in the past, Chelsea, Terry, Carvalho, United, Vidic, Ferdinand. Those guys went on a pitch saying, we do not concede today, no matter what. That is our primary goal. And we just don't have that in this team. And we don't have a manager that seems to be able to get that under control and fix that problem.
Sava, I want to get your point on this, right? Because, this is going to go more into Big Ange now. Now,
brilliant. Come to me if you're about to go to Big Ange whilst I've got people abusing me in the chat who were just abusing me in the hippies chat. I mean, thanks. Loving it.
The reason why I'm asking, right, and the reason why I'm going to ask you, right, because I think you can actually take this across very well. So for me, Cole's already said it. The concern is that we're seeing Brendan Johnson and Porro making mistakes, right? But then we've seen in games this season where we get to half time, we're 2-0 down, right? Yeah. And the goals have come from that right-hand side. Why is Ange not making changes? Why is he just leaving the players out there just to get completely annihilated and just leave it as it is?
I don't know how honest you want me to be. Listen,
look, Sava, you be as honest as you want.
Position. Yeah, if I'm honest, I'm called an Arsenal fan. Mm-hmm. If I lie, I lose who I am as a content creator. Yeah. The manager's not very good. I'll call it out. I'll say it for what it is.
Yeah.
There's a reason he's 57 and never managed in a top league. There's a reason. There's a reason why we go 2-0 down at home to a team that have never won a game in the Premier League so far this season, and we send the same 11 out for the second half. Same tactics, same 11. Top managers don't do that. They cause havoc in the changing room. They ring the changes. Jose, don't let that happen. Jose would try. You try and do things. Look, for me, I said at halftime of my show, we should still come back and get something, right? This is a team that have conceded a lot of goals. Just use our brains, keep calm, change it up, let's do something. But we go straight back out there and do the same thing. We go out there, we do the same thing, the same style, the same mistakes. Look, listen, I don't think that we're going to lose games. We're going to lose games we shouldn't. All teams lose games they shouldn't. But that's two in 2.5, 3 weeks. Them and Crystal Palace, where we've seen the same thing. Two teams that no one else is struggling with. They then play Spurs and they get the result because there's this soft underbelly. And the thing for me is I keep hearing that Ange has changed the mentality. Ange has changed the culture. I don't see it. That's my point. I feel like there's so much. Look, I can't help it. I don't rate the manager, right? There's no ulterior motive. right? I'm gonna vent. I'm gonna rant.
Yep.
Liam, Sam, I'm so sorry. This is the first time you're streaming with me. I am so utterly effed off after what's happened tonight. I'm so fuming for
Venting.
everything I do to help other YouTubers.
Like
you ask
me.
how many YouTubers I help them grow their channel, buy their equipment, do this. And I've got YouTubers making videos about me, calling me an Arsenal fan, right? Man up, ring me, come on my show and debate me, right? I find it so pathetic, right? So let me vent, let me rant. I don't rate this manager for all of the facts. I don't hate him because of his age. I don't hate him because of his nationality. By the way, he was born where my dad was born. We're the same nationality, right? I don't like the manager because our form is shocking, because our away form is dreadful. I don't like him because we're seeing no upward trajectory at this football club. People can talk, we can lie, we can pretend. Youth projects, it's a process. What does this mean? These are words and phrases that are thrown out, but if I ask anybody to give me a definition, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. We are getting worse factually. Look at our last 10 games, our last 20 games, our last 30 games, our last 40 games. We're doing that. No one wants to see it. And if that means I have to be one of the people that calls it out, I'm going to call it out. If that makes me a shit fan after 40 years of supporting Tottenham, then I'm a shit fan, right? But more and more people are now starting to see it, right? A win against Aston Villa in good style doesn't change the fact that we've lost 5 games in 11. 5. Somebody worked out today, if we continue this pattern, that's 17 defeats in a season. 5. That's shocking. No one around us, right? Again, sorry, I shouldn't. In a coma saying if Ange was Spanish would be different. Not if his results were the same. This isn't anything to do with anyone's nationality. I'm not English. I'm not fully English myself. This whole nonsense that he's not English, so I hate him. The facts are these, Marlon, and sorry for ranting. I'm fuming. Caught me on a bad night now.
No,
right?
I know.
Caught me on a bad night.
Carry on.
I hate snakes. I hate people that have got no bottle. My channel is open to anybody. I say this. Anybody can come on my channel and debate me. Anybody.
6 o'clock Monday.
If you need to make your show, if you've got no content that you have to put me on your thumbnail and you have to make a video about me saying I'm twerking for Arsenal when I've supported this football club for 40 years, you can get in the bin. Absolutely get in the bin. It's embarrassing. Here's some stats, right? 5 defeats from 11. 5 from 11, right? We've lost 10 of our last 18 games. We're not a relegation team. That's what relegation threatened teams do. They lose 10 in 18, right? We've won 4 away games in 2024. That's disgusting. 4 away. I'm not making this up. These are the facts, not my facts, the facts. In the last 39 games, which is a whole season and more, and one more game, right? We've lost 17 games of football in the Premier League. 17. Whilst conceding shed loads of goals. So please tell me, somebody, what am I missing that this guy is doing that needs me to turn around and go, actually, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. He's a really good manager. What am I missing that everybody else is seeing? He said, I don't need any more defenders because they'll block the path of Phillips and Vuskovic. He said, we could have acquired leaders. I didn't want to buy them. I wanted to build them from within. He said these things. And then when it's not going well, the excuses are madness. Like, where's our what's the word I'm looking for? Where's our ambition? Where's the benchmark for this club at? Is it now going to be that it doesn't matter how badly we are, we just all have to turn around and go, I love Ange, I love Ange. What? Why do I have to do that? Why does it make me a fake fan to say the facts? Why? Am I the first football fan that has not liked a manager? Am I the first football fan to turn around and go, well, yeah, I don't want the manager here? Because look at the results over 12 months, Marlon. These aren't results over 4 games. This is 12 months. 17 wins, 17 defeats, 5 draws. Do you know where that has us, Marlon, over 12 months? Do you know where that form has you in the table?
I'm going to guess somewhere 10th, 11th.
10th. It's actually 10.5 over the last 5 years. Yeah. I know that's not a real position, right?
Yeah, forget it, yeah.
So, sorry, I've gone on a bit there. I am so sorry, but I just don't get this notion that you have to abuse people because they have a difference of opinion to me. And again, in a coma, dude, last season is last season. This season has carried on the same. 5 defeats in 11 games.
Can I ask you something?
Madness.
Yeah, can I ask you something? Because I saw this stat and I thought actually you'll be the best person to answer this, because obviously I think a lot of people are basing it off, you know, some of the stats are in Ange's favour for this season. Even though you're absolutely spot on, 1-5, lost 6, drawn 1 is not good enough, right? And I just wanted to bring this out because I saw it the other week and I thought I need to get your opinion on it and why everyone's in that notion. So shots from last year, we're up. XG, you know, it's not my favourite thing, but we're up. Goals, we're up. Shots conceded, we're up, as in we're conceding less. XG goals, we're conceding less. Possession, we were better last year. 10 plus pass sequences, we're worse off. Possession loss in defensive third, we're better off. High turnovers, we're better off. Shot ending, we're exactly the same. And goals at half time and goals ending at half time. So are people seeing these little stats here and thinking that Ange is making a progress and this is what they're living off? Or is it a case of actually we should be living off the win, draw and losses?
But these are underlying stats which don't win you football matches.
Yep. Okay.
Right?
Yep.
For all of this, Marlon, if people want to come with that, right? Well, what are we doing here? Is there a league table for XG? Is there a league table?
You know there is one.
Possession for shots. At the end of the day, this time last year we were 10 points better off. This time last year we'd lost 1 game of football. I don't understand. Like, people want to bury their head in the sand and just say it's fine, it's okay. But give me evidence that it's okay. Give me evidence that it's going in the right direction. We can't just, sorry, I've supported this club for 40 years. I won't have people that have supported this club 2, 3, 4, 5 years going, it's fine. You're lying. You don't know Ange. What are we doing here? Let me ask all of you on the panel. Sorry, guys. I really am sorry. I'm so effed off, right? Let me ask you a question. If we saw one of our rivals doing what we've done over 40 games, 30 games, 20 games, 10 games, losing all these games, you telling me we're not laughing and calling their manager shit? Please be honest.
We're doing the same with Arteta.
Right? But because it's our manager, just believe. I keep hearing when we finish off our chances. This isn't about finishing off chances. We score goals. This isn't about finishing off chances. This is about we are not organised. At the back, we look bloody dreadful. Our fullbacks can't cut out crosses. Our goalkeeper can't deal with crosses. Our centre-backs look all over the shop. Romero doesn't lead. Van der Ven's getting injured a lot. Like, why is pointing out the facts, why is that bad? Why do we all not want better? Why do we all just sit there and go, yeah, but our XG is good? I don't care. I'm not 12. I'm not a 12-year-old. I don't give a crap about XG and field tilt and touches in the opposition's box. We're a football team. We should be winning games of football. We've lost 5 in 11. This is the worst start to a season for 17 years. I don't know how many facts have to be bad for this manager before people actually go, oh, yeah, maybe I overrated him a bit. Because he's not done a good job. He hasn't, factually. I'm going to shut up now because I'm frustrated, not with any of you. Sorry.
No, all to good though. But Liam, you wanted to go in there. Come in.
Yeah. I firstly just want to be clear. Obviously, you can have your opinion. Like, that's the great thing about football is there's a plethora of different opinions. Obviously, you'll disagree with some of them, you won't agree with others. And I do disagree with your opinion on are we showing progression of the team? Yes, maybe the league table doesn't represent that currently, but we still got to appreciate we're still 3 points off of, as we kept saying, third place prior to the Ipswich game. And I appreciate, yes, we didn't win that game, fine. If we look at the results earlier this season, I would argue the Leicester City game could have been done by half time, where we drew 1-1.
I'll argue that
Everton,
it wasn't.
It wasn't, no, but it could have well been.
Yeah,
So
I could be a millionaire, but I'm not. Like, again, it's lots of ifs, right? We could have beaten Newcastle. We could have beaten this. We didn't.
100%, but I also would argue under world-class managers or who people class as world-class managers, such as Conte, we were sitting back and we were defending from minute one, and that's not the way. That was never going to win us games long term. In terms of other games, so we beat Everton 4-0. I'm sure they could have. I'm sure they could have scored in that game. I'm pretty sure they had like a death chance they should have scored. So maybe 4-0 was over-representation. Newcastle game obviously lost 2-1. Arsenal we lost 1-0. If I can't really remember that game them having a plethora of chances. I can't remember us conceding a whole lot of chances that game. Obviously they scored from a set piece. So you won Coventry, luckily, quite frankly. Obviously Jed Spence made the difference. Beat Brentford quite convincingly. Karabag, obviously we spoke about earlier. Manchester United obviously beat them 3-0. Faros beat them. Brighton Hove Albion, we capitulated and we conceded 3 goals in about, was it 15 minutes? And West Ham, we beat them convincingly. AZ Alkmaar, obviously we won. Crystal Palace, we lost, which I think was a major upset. Obviously, Man City, obviously Aston Villa, 4-1. Galatasaray, obviously recently, and then Ipswich. I think in terms of the performances, I think it's more about creating chances, and that's why people are seeing sort of the ray of light in a sense that we are seeing our team create chances, and it could be argued we're not putting them away, and that could be the argument. And I also appreciate that stats don't win you games, but at the end of the day, I do feel there is progression under Ange, and I also feel if you've got the thought process of, I know this is a bit of sort of deviation, but do you feel we had a good transfer window?
We had a terrible transfer window.
Okay,
we had one of the worst transfer windows in the history of Tottenham Hotspur.
Yeah, okay, so if you believe that and you believe that's the recruitment of the team, would you not then argue that it's not fair to judge the manager based on that transfer window?
He said they were his players, though.
Right.
He said he signed off on those players. So if he's signing off on 40 million Gray, Bergval, those sorts of players, you can't then sit there and want to turn around and say, oh, yeah, but if Ange gets backed, Ange has told us he was backed.
Right.
But do you know what? The only argument I'll have against that is because when Conte and obviously Mourinho were here, we still had the same issue where players are being bought. And I've always said this, Ange is not going to come out against these bosses and go, no, I wasn't backed. Even Conte.
Why say anything?
But yeah.
Why say anything?
Marlon as well, though. He's the manager that brought Werner back for a second spell.
Right.
If you, at the end of the season, he told us, I need better options up front. And his first move is go and bring one of the worst players he had towards the end of that season back. Is that bringing better options in?
Do you think then, and this is where I'm kind of leaning towards Liam on the sense of, and I completely get he's come out and said it, like some of the stuff he has said in the media, I kind of go, take it with a pinch of salt and kind of go, you know what? So I just don't believe Ange when he comes out. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I look at what people were saying with Pochettino towards the end, Conte and stuff, and you can start to see that these are signings the club are making for him. And the whole Werner situation, do you think it was a case of the club had told him, look, we're going to bring him back? And Ange kind of went, he's seen this before, seen this rodeo, and he thought, I'm going to end up with no one, or I'm going to end up with Odegaard. Which
I'd be better off with no one.
Yeah. I don't like Werner either, and that nearly set me over the edge. But I look at the signings that have been made, and I will sit there and say, right, the only time Conte really, really explained to us that it wasn't he signing was Jed Spence. All the rest, he kind of said, yeah, he signed off on them and whatnot, and that was it until we had the outburst.
But Marlon, look, the thing is, right, this is what our fan base does, right? We do this all the time. All I saw all summer, and Carl, you're in my WhatsApp group. We share all this shit round, right? All we saw all summer was, oh my God, what a signing. This is an Ange signing. This guy
Generational.
plays Ange ball. He's perfect for Ange ball. When I'm sitting there going, what are we doing here? This is poor. You're negative. These are great signings. The moment it doesn't go well, it's, oh, but do you think we had a good transfer window? Well, hang on. If we didn't have a good transfer window, why was everybody gassing up this season? Why was everyone gassing up the manager? Right? Do you know what? We can't have it both ways. I'll argue this, right? I'm not saying every manager gets every player they want. Of course, I'm too old and ugly to know that.
Yeah.
Right? Of course, we get that. But surely as a manager, you turn around and they go, right, do you want to re-sign Timo Werner? You go, do you know what? Listen, guys, I took him on loan. No. Ange actually came out before the Timo Werner deal was signed, if you remember, and said, the recruitment team know my opinion. They're dealing with it. Now, read into that what you will. But if the recruitment team knew his opinion and his opinion was, I don't want Werner, and they got him, at what point do you turn around and go, whoa, what are we doing here? What I'm hearing is that he really wanted Odegaard and he really wanted Solanke. I'm hearing that he really wanted those two.
Solanke, yeah. It's a Solanke
Right.
and Odegaard, yeah. I do.
But what we can't do it is when a player works out, say that this is the one the manager wanted, and when they don't work out, say the manager didn't want them.
Yeah,
the manager has said over and over and over and over and over again, Marlon, he talks so much, he doesn't learn.
I think that's our biggest problem with him, right? He does talk too much.
I didn't want to buy. He said how many times? I didn't want to buy experience and senior pros and leadership. It's mad.
Sorry, just to interject there. One thing I do think he could be trying to do is, I don't know if you've ever watched it. It's like an interview with Sam Allardyce where he compares himself to Pep Guardiola and says he's better than him. Have you ever seen that interview?
Yeah, I think
so. Apparently he did it to try and take the heat off his players. So maybe that could be an aspect, the fact that he is owning that and trying to divert it to himself instead of sort of having his squad scrutinised.
Listen, I hear you, but the problem is, I'll ask you this question. I knew, Carl, as I said, you see my thoughts every day in our WhatsApp group. And I said, didn't I, at the beginning of the season, you watch, we'll start well. When the wheels come off, watch everybody do a complete 180 on their opinion of the transfer window, their opinion of Ange, their opinion of Levy. And we do it like clockwork. All the people I'm seeing making videos about, I'll tell you what, this is what Solanke brings. All these tactical videos of Solanke does this, and Odegaard, if you look at his dribbling, this is Gray does this, Bergvall does this. When it doesn't work out or it's not going well, suddenly it's Ange wasn't backed. Cool. But the manager ourselves has told us that he's been backed. He's told us that he didn't want experience and didn't want to bring in leaders, which is absolutely mind-blowing. But I'll ask you this. With this team that we've got, because suddenly all our players are shit when we lose. Suddenly, all those people that rated them all. You know those, every week, Marlon, you know, when I'm told, what do you think of Bentancur? And I say, yeah, I think he's decent. People go, oh my God, he's class. Basuma's class. Son's class. Solanke's class. Johnson's class. Romero, Van de Ven. Suddenly, when we lose games, they're not good enough. Suddenly, they're not good enough. Is this squad so bad it should be losing 5 out of 11, 10 out of 18, 17 out of 39? Ask yourselves that question, then tell me if the fault doesn't lie on the tactics and the manager.
Sam, Jane said nothing for a while. Go on. You can answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just give a sort of a bit of background as well. I mean, I came into the season thinking the transfer window was average at best. It was not terrible because we finally started to get some deadwood out of the club, right? But it was terrible, as Saba said, because we didn't sign any experience. And the biggest gripe I had with Ange for me, was that he said, I don't want to sign a proper number 6 because that's not who I am. That's not how I want to play football. I don't think we need that. And I think if you asked the vast majority of fans after the first season, what did they think that we needed from the transfer window? I think a heavy percentage would have said we needed a Rodri type player, someone who will get stuck in but can dictate the ball and sit in front of that back line so that we're not defending two at the back basically every time we play someone. I personally, I don't dislike the players. I don't think that all of them are good enough, but I think that, I got into the streaming side of this stuff maybe 5-6 months ago because there's so much sensationalism in the fan base. And I know that's maybe a Twitter thing, but there's such a clear divide between it's either the best thing since sliced bread, you can't criticize Ange because he's playing this beautiful brand of attacking football. You scoundrels wanted Conte out because he played defensive and you were begging for attacking football. Now attacking football's come in and you don't like it because we're not winning all the games. But I think it comes back to the consistency aspect. Yes, I think Ange had a tough job to come into, but he also had the easiest job in the world to play attacking football and get the fans on side, right? And I think that at least for those first 10 games, a lot of fans did get on side. But in those first 10 games, there were still moments. I always think back to the Manchester United game when we beat them at home 2-0. They had so many chances in that game. And there were so many games in that first run where we actually got let off. Even the Arsenal game, Maddison gives the ball away on the edge of the box and Gabriel Jesus blasts it over or wide from a scoring position. He should score that. We're then 3-1 down at the Emirates. And the game's pretty much gone by then. I agree a lot about the tactics. I just think that we don't play to the strengths of our players. We've brought Maddison in, and Maddison, in my opinion, from watching him play at Leicester, and I think it's backed up by the stats, is a number 10. I don't think he's an 8. I think it's showing his weaknesses that he's not the Kulu type that will get stuck in and help out defensively and hold off players. He needs to be in that sort of little place between the defenders and the midfielders, waiting to just pick that ball in to play behind or take a shot off. And it's the same with Son. I don't think that he's a touchline winger. He's an inside forward. And I think that with Brennan also being an inside forward and Son being the player that he is, Son plays the role of touchline winger, even if it's not working, whereas Brennan drifts inside too much. And that means that when we attack teams, this is my opinion, when we attack teams, it's so obvious what we're going to do because it goes to Son, and that's kind of the only real variation of attack that we have. We have to basically play Brennan in behind. So they double up on Son, they triple up on Son. He beats the occasional player, and then he's got to put the ball into the box between 4 or 5 of their players, and our players trying to get on the ball. I just think that there's little tweaks that Ange could do, and the fact that he hasn't done them. I'm not Ange out. I came into the season saying I need to see him change his tactics, specifically the fullbacks, and play with conventional fullbacks, considering that we brought in these 2 fullbacks who played in back fives, and their predominant role was basically staying wide and getting crosses in. Like in that Sporting game when we first played against Porro, and they played really well against us. He just hugged that touchline and kept putting balls in. I think it's frustrating for me that Ange can't do this. And as I said, I said at the beginning of the season, and sort of as the season started, and we were inconsistent and not showing enough progression for me personally. I was saying I'm still going to give Ange the season, but if he doesn't fix up, and this was around the time of the Coventry game, if he doesn't fix up, then he's going to be gone by Christmas, by January, because as soon as more and more fans start to get frustrated, and I think that ties back into your point, Sava, about saying the players aren't good enough. We've seen in the past, as soon as the fans start to get on the case of the manager and eventually Levy, they choke, and then the manager goes. I think the problem is, who do you necessarily bring in? Because I look around at the manager pool and I wonder who could come in and actually steer the ship right now.
But Sam, with that point, sorry, listen, I agree with a tremendous amount of what you said. By the way, I don't want it to appear that I just debate everyone and everything. I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
But we've seen this before. We know what the chairman is like. When the fan base is tetchy, it's okay. When the fan base gets the majority of fans getting annoyed and frustrated, he will look at it and go, how far off top four are we? And pull the trigger. At the moment, it's fine because the league is very hit and miss, and only really Liverpool are firing, and then City have started, but we know they'll be up there. At the risk of sounding like a Man City fan, I still think they'll win the league. But the problem for me is when we say which managers are out there, that all comes down to what's our ambition. Look at Man United. Man United have, by the way, Man United are 1 point behind us. Man United have just had the worst start to their Premier League history, right? This is a club that we were, and again, this is where I say about fans. It's funny when it's outside of the window, we tell the truth. When it's inside our own living room, we don't seem to have the same beliefs. And what I mean by that is, look at the job Ten Hag did, right? Bearing in mind, this guy's won 2 trophies in 2 years, right? Their fans, look at, no, this ain't good enough. This is not good enough. This guy's got to go. Their board have acted. There was none of this who's out there as the manager. Their board turned around and went, right, who's a top manager? Amorim. Oh, God, he's in a job. He's in a job with a team that are flying. They're top of the league. They're second or third in the Champions League, right? They've turned around and gone, right, we've got to pay to get this guy. So they've paid to get rid of Ten Hag, paid to bring in Ruben Amorim. For me, I think that's going to save their season. And I wouldn't bet against them going on to finish. I'm not saying definitely. I wouldn't bet against them going on to finish top 4 and winning something because he's a top manager. So when we're saying what managers are out there, I think there's loads of managers that would look at this Spurs squad because, contrary to belief, Sam, I don't hate all the players. I think that nearly all of them are being played in the wrong position. James Maddison is a playmaker. We never see him as a playmaker, right? Sonny, he's not a winger anymore. Always plays the wing. Brendan Johnson's not a winger, right? We've got Porro and Udogie. They're not fullbacks. They're wing backs, right? Vicario, he's not a sweeper keeper. He's just a normal keeper. He don't want to play with his feet. That's not his game. For me, I think if you get a pragmatic manager, now when I say pragmatic, that doesn't mean I need Conte and 10 men behind the ball. But there's loads of pragmatic managers out there that will look and go, hang on, this team, first of all, it's set up brilliantly for a 3-4-3 or 3-5-2, whatever people want to call the wing-back system. We've got a playmaker that can play behind Son and Solanke in a 2, right? We've got a lot of options in midfield. You've got Porro and Udogie who are perfect for wing-backs. If that doesn't work, you've got Reggie who could play left wing-back. You've got Jed Spence who could play left wing-back. Buy a couple more centre-backs. I truly believe that a proper manager that hasn't got the ego, that will work on tactics, and a manager, Sam, that for me looks at the opposition every weekend and says, what are they dangerous at? Because at the moment, we're not good enough where we, like City for the last 7-8 years, City play their game and don't care about anyone else. Yes, Pep mixes it up, variations, but City are better than everyone else at doing what they do. We seem to think we're that. We go and play our same football against everyone. Galatasaray being the example. You know how quick Osimhen is. You know how strong he is. You know he's going to play off the man of the last shoulder. But he didn't do anything to counter that. We just played our own football with a high line. So for me, I think there's plenty of managers that come in, look at this and go, right, let's get a formation that suits the players. I genuinely think there's loads of managers that can do it.
But
And
do you
Iriola
think-
at Bournemouth for one.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say about. I was actually going to include him in my point. Iriola, I really like him, but like looking inwards at the club and how we're structured, do you genuinely believe? When I say, is there a manager out there that can do it for us? I don't mean there's not a manager in world football that can bring Spurs out the slump or finally take us forward. I'm thinking more. Are we going to do a United and go pay 10, 15 million to one of these clubs to get their manager out? I don't see it happening personally.
Can I ask a question, right? Because I've put a shameful poll in the chat, and I want to ask you guys this question because Sav said something, right? And there's a reason behind why I've brought this poll up. And Liam, Sam, and then Carl, and then I'll come with Sava. But would you take Ten Hag at the club, Liam?
Absolutely not.
Sam?
No, but had he been our manager and won us 2 cups, and even if he was playing how shit he was, do you think he would have been sacked?
Carl?
Not for me, no.
Sava?
I don't want him now.
No,
I
yeah.
I want the Ten Hag that was brilliant at
Ajax.
Ajax. I don't want him now, but again, look at what he did. Look at what Ten Hag did. He's won them 2 trophies in 2 years, and yet they've gone and sacked him. We've got a manager that's had a god awful year, and everyone's waxing lyrical about him. Like the standards of the clubs are chalk and cheese.
So the reason why I'm asking this question, right, and I'm bringing this up here because Ange Postecoglou, right, at the moment is sitting 5th in Spurs managers, right, which, to be fair, is probably not that bad. He's just sitting above Conte at the moment, right? And I have to include the 10 games. He's got cup games against him. But if I sat there and told you, that Ten Hag has a better win percentage than Postecoglou, but nobody wants him, why is Sava and the guys that don't want Ange here, why are they not right to say that they think we can get a better manager? That's my question. And that's the question to the guys on the panel as well. You all said no, but yet, would you keep Ange in? Even though he's got a worse win percentage at the moment than Ten Hag?
I would. But...
No, not for me. I think the guy has just proven he's too stubborn. His tactics are not going to work. He's not going to change and adapt. And for me, that's why now I can make a change, and I can see a change coming before the end of December, possibly.
I think they talk about, like the guy before the guy. And I think that Ange has and will be a decent stopgap for us. He's helped us get rid of a lot of shit. Hasn't been backed sufficiently, in my opinion, regardless if the money has been spent. I think it goes down to the wages and sort of stuff like that. That's what's keeping us from getting these top players. But I just think that he's come in to be a good stopgap. And, I thank him for kind of steadying the ship and bringing a bit of love back to my love back to the club after it was sucked out from Conte and Nuno. And I know Nuno's doing well, but and Mourinho. So I just think that, I would get rid of him. I'm not banging on the door of the club saying, get this fraud out. But again, I think he's the guy before the guy.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, I'm somebody, I don't like throwaway comments and buzzwords. Steadied the ship. How? His 18-month tenure, the form is absolutely atrocious. What's he steadied?
I'm thinking about it more not necessarily about like the football stuff, because I agree with you about the inconsistency, and I think you get along very well with my granddad. My granddad is in the group chat every game. Like these effing C's, like they don't know how to play bloody.
You got old man view, Sava.
It's just people who have watched Spurs for a long time.
Yeah.
I hold them in higher regard to someone who's only been watching since the Pochettino era, right? And I'm only 25, so I'm not too long before that. But I started watching sort of like when Harry was here and seeing players. I talk about it all the time. Seeing players like Ryan Nielsen come in, and those were the kind of signings that we were making. Louis Saha, and stuff like that. But when I say steady the ship, I think I mean it more. And when we had Conte, I live in Southwest London, right? And I had a season ticket. And, it takes me an hour and a half to 2 hours sometimes to get to the game. So it got to the point where I was genuinely like, I cannot be fucked to go to the game right now. And what was ironic about it was I think we played Crystal Palace on my birthday. And I was like, you know what? Fuck these guys. I'm not going to the game on my birthday because I could just see what's going to happen. We're going to lose. And then obviously we win. But I just felt like my love for the club was sucked out of me. And so when I say steady the ship, I mean more I was excited again, or have been excited again to watch us play. Admittedly, in the last 6 months, I'm waning again. but I do think he came in and did a good job for at least that aspect of it.
No, I hear you. And by the way, listen. My opinion isn't to make you or Liam or Carl or Marlon agree with me. I'm comfortable enough in my opinion that I give my opinion. And I don't need to make videos about other YouTubers who have a different opinion from me because I'm quite comfortable in my own skin. But a little dig there. But at the end of the day, the way I see it is, for me, I've never felt more detached from this football club, Sam. And thank you for politely calling me old in two different ways there. That was nice. Look, look, again, probably Carl. I mean, look, not being rude, but Carl is of, that my era.
Yeah,
Carl,
47, 47, mate. So
there we go. So Carl's got years on me, but look, for me, I identified, I did a show, for someone who's not a Spurs fan, I did a whole 3-hour stream this morning ranking every Spurs manager from the Premier League era and could talk comfortably about all 17 of them. For someone who's an Arsenal fan, that's quite astounding. And I said, I loved Harry Redknapp, right? That's my guy. That's my type of manager. I think he's brilliant with the press. I think brilliant with the players. There's no, I didn't, when we lost games, Harry would take it on him. Like, I don't mean like, oh, Ange did it once at the weekend for Ipswich. Harry would come out and go, no, not good enough. It's not good enough. Like, I loved his honesty. I didn't feel like there was any waffle. I don't know. He just, that was me.
Still scarred.
Do you know what he did, Marlon? When we want to talk about, for example, when we want to talk about Ange's first 18 months, does anyone, like, obviously, what did Redknapp do in his first 18 months at Tottenham? Does anyone remember?
Yeah, he took us from bottom to 8th.
The second
bottom, and then to 4th,
and then to 4th.
Yeah.
Right, Harry Redknapp broke that top 4, and at the time, the top 4 was a proper. Remember, Carl? It was a proper top 4, right? That no one was breaking into. And Harry Redknapp came in, took a team that had 2 points from 8 games. That's steadying a ship, right? That's steadying a ship. He took us from 2 points in 8 games. We finished 8th. He then went and bought senior pros, cheap. He hardly spent any money. He went and got loads of senior pros. He got a right winger on the right wing, a left winger on the left wing. He had a playmaker playing as playmaker, 2 men in midfield, proper men that wanted to battle. Right? He had one striker. And you know what? In all of that time, his defense was good. If you actually look at the seasons he was at Spurs, his defense conceded like 43, 44 goals in a season. His attack scored goals. He entertained everybody, not like what we're seeing now in fits and bursts. Didn't they, Cole? Spurs played brilliant football. Van der Vaart, Bale, Lennon. And what he also did, for anyone you can't really remember this era, was he had a Bale that was a left back and he converted him to being a left winger and he went on to be Gareth Bale. He took Luka Modric, who was a left winger, and brought him inside in the middle and said, hang on, I don't need you doing all the hard work. I'm going to buy Wilson Palacios, sit him next to you. He'll kick everyone. He'll do your doggy work. Luka, go and run the game. And for that 18 months...
He did something better than that. Yeah, because he bought Wilson Palacios in, but when we were going for that Champions League run, he took a cropped, slow, couldn't move Tom Huddleston, played him next to Modric, but he could pass the ball, and they ended up finishing the season, and we literally won every game apart from the last 2 because we'd already qualified from the Champions League. But that's what he did.
He did brilliantly. That was feel-good factor. There was none of this. And again, listen, I can see people in the chat just saying things like they love Ange and he's a great manager. That's fine. I'm not telling anyone not to feel that. But the evidence isn't showing that, right? And if we're not going to go by evidence and we want to go by feelings, that's fine. We can go by feelings. But the problem is, if you're not winning a lot of games of football and you're losing a lot of games of football, then, the facts are showing that he's not that good. His last calendar year has been, I think average would be kind. His last calendar year has been below a lot of teams that have got tiny budgets, squads that aren't as good as ours, tiny little stadiums. But for some reason, We just want to believe. And I get it. We've been hurt before. I get it. We don't want the manager merry-go-round. I get it. I get it that we don't want to change another manager. But the facts don't lie. And not cherry-picked facts and stat. This is a year of nothingness. A year. And for me, the last thing I'll say on this manager for me is living off of last year's the first 10 games. If he had not had those first 10 games, would everyone be having the knickers in a twist over this manager? Because I've never seen a fan base rate a manager who's doing so mediocre as he is. I don't get it. I don't. We have the cheek to laugh at Arteta. We have the cheek to laugh at other clubs. We laugh at Chelsea. We're going, look at Chelsea, they're a mess. Chelsea, for the last 38, in the same period of time, here's a question for you. In the same period of time that Ange has lost 17 games and has us 10.5 in the form table over a year, where are Chelsea in that form table? Third, right? So again, this is what I mean. We're laughing at other clubs when inwardly our managers, right, have done badly. And Jacob said, I don't think we've lost loads. Jacob, we've lost 10 of 18. We've lost 17 of 39. The trend is going that way. We are losing a lot of games of football. Sorry, it's just fact.
So it's really weird you say that, and I will back you up on that, because I think there was a stat up a couple of weeks ago, right, and it was all about the first 45 games that all these managers had been in charge of. Right, Ange had won a lot, but he'd lost a lot as well, right? But when you looked at the other managers, I think it was Ferguson, Arteta, and someone else who was underneath him that had been successful later on. It just took them more time, right? And I looked at it and went, the biggest issue that I have with Ange, right, and I think, look, I'm not Ange out. I'm just going to throw that out here now. I'm not Ange out, but the biggest issue I have with Ange is he loses way too many games, because when you looked at Arteta and Ferguson's record, they hadn't won as many, but they drew too many. And I always say, when they're in the balance, when games are in the balance, you're more likely to get more of those draws into wins than you are those losses into wins. And I think that was the key element for Arteta, and it was the key element for Sir Alex in the first 5 years, right? And then today, I've seen a lot of people going about Arteta and Klopp. Now, this I'll throw to all of you guys now, right? The fact is, Arteta and Klopp had something that Ange ain't going to have at this club. There's a significant amount of money that was spent on players and wages to take them over the line. And I want to bring you in first, Liam, for this question. Do you think Ange will ever get that significant amount of backing he needs for his system? Because as Sava said earlier, right, and I do agree with him slightly, he hasn't got the players to play his system. His system can work, but does it need the sort of quality that needs to take us forward? And we currently have too much of that inconsistent with some of our players.
It's interesting you asked about is he going to get the players for his system? And in terms of transfer fees, Brennan Johnson was a player he wanted. That was a player he picked, and it's clear that he wanted Brennan Johnson. It was perfect for his system. And I think, obviously, Brennan was a mistake. For 50 million that we paid, it was a big mistake, and that is a black mark, I guess, against Ange. And ultimately, you can say, will he get the players for his system?
Yeah.
And, well, he chose him. He's supposed to be for his system, but he isn't good enough for this side, really. He's a good player. I think he's got quality, but he's very limited. He can't really dribble. He can definitely score a goal, but he's a secondary striker. And I think at the club we have too many of them. I think Richarlison's a secondary striker. I think Son's a secondary striker. Obviously Johnson as well. Will he ever get backing in terms of wages? Honestly, I don't think so. With the current setup at the club, I don't think we're going to ever pay anyone more than Son, because Son is our captain. Son's brings obviously other things apart from obviously his footballing ability. I don't think we will break our wage structure to bring in someone to be paid more than Son. So if it's a question of bringing in a player that Ange wants that's going to break that, no, I don't think that will happen.
Sam, where do you sit on it? Because everyone's comparing it to Klopp, and the reason why I'm bringing Klopp and Arteta in, because everyone on social media all day has been comparing it to Klopp and Arteta. right? But I look at what Liverpool did and I look what Arsenal did, and I'm going, I don't think Spurs are not going to do that. So why are we even comparing it to those two? Should we be comparing it to, I don't know, someone who's on our level like Emery and Brighton's and them clubs? Because that's who we're trying to fit in the model with. We're trying to buy players cheap. Well, not cheap. We're trying to get these players in and take massive risks. And a lot of people have said, especially in the summer, we've all said the transfer window wasn't great, but we needed established players, Premier League players. And you've mentioned Neto, right? I mentioned Eze, right? I'm mentioning players that are Premier League proven. So if Spurs are never going to do this, does this mean that we're going to have to accept these inconsistent results? And unfortunately, we as a fan base either need to come together and go, look, this is not good enough for what you've promised, or do we just sit separately and be divided as we are? Because look, let's take the chat for talking purposes, right? Everyone's been going at Jacob because he's Ange and whatnot, and other people are going at Sava. But hold on, we should be a united fan base. Why are we arguing with each other when theoretically we all want the same thing, right?
Because we're not allowed opinions. We're not.
Well, of course, Sava, I know.
No, sorry, we're not allowed opinions. We're not allowed opinions. You said something about the manager I like. Go and support Arsenal. That's where we're at. That's this fan base.
So, Sam,
yeah, look, I mean, again, Sava, I agree with that. And as I said, that is kind of one of the reasons I wanted to start getting into the streaming thing. And when I started, I just thought, oh, yeah, I'll just go on the Irish Hotspur fan show and just kind of bring some middle ground between the two. And they clearly like me enough, and here I am 6 months later on another channel. Thankfully, I've been trusted to take my views over. But I was thinking about what Liam said about Johnson, and it's like in all the systems that we've played before, where we've played this like counter-attacking football, Johnson would have probably been a great player, and I've actually defended Johnson quite a lot, because even though he doesn't always necessarily provide much in the games in terms of overall play, his numbers are actually very good, or they're pretty good for a player that everyone calls a flop, right? And I'm not trying to go out and say again and defend poor play at times, but I do think that I agree with Liam. I think that Brennan is a bit of a black mark against Ange, because that was the one player that he genuinely wanted. And I think that if you actually look at how he plays in terms of what we need for the system, a genuine out-and-out winger, not a striker who plays on the wing, it doesn't seem like Ange bought the right player for his own system. And then shoehorning other players to fit his system, again, just kind of it all frustrates me. And we've said before, and I think it was both Neto and then maybe Gallagher was a bit of a Chelsea thing. We just like never really do any business with Chelsea. We didn't want to pay the wages for Neto, and I see a lot of people saying we're looking at Grealish for January. Do you think that we're going to go and pay 400 grand a week, whatever Grealish is on at Man City, and bring Grealish into the club? It's just not and never going to happen, unfortunately. And that's the frustration. And I've said before, I'm not really a massive Levy outer. I'm kind of, as I say, in the middle. I wouldn't mind him going, but I also worry that we could end up getting someone in who just doesn't know what to do, and we end up falling.
Do you know what, Sam? On that note, right? Yeah. Do you know what, Sam? You know what? I kind of sit here with it. I don't actually care who comes in next. If they mess up, they mess up. That's where I'm fully at with Levy now, because if people have told me in the past that Levy has set up this club to be profitable over the next how many years, right? If he's done his job, the next guy who comes in, yeah, they might mess up on the football pitch like he has, but regarding the offside pitch stuff, that should stay exactly the same if the blueprint of what he has built is successful. That's how I see it. So actually, I just want a different voice at the top, so it starts to feed down now. And I'm in that mode. I don't care if the next one does crap, because hopefully there'll be another one. Personally, I'm sick and tired of Levy, right? And this is where I'm quite different with like, I know Sava's the bit on he doesn't think Ange is good enough. I'm on the bit of, you know what? I think Ange possibly could do something with a totally different board. And that's where I'm sitting with it. But I know it's not going to happen here.
Can I ask then?
Yeah, go on.
Based again, this is what I'm very much about.
Yeah.
I'm all for that. You know my feelings. I've been Levy out since October 2007, right? But I'll ask this question. Two things can be true at once. So when people say, "Oh, if you want the manager in, you like the owners," it's not true.
It's not true.
Based off what evidence do we think that even if he had a better chairman, this manager would do well? Because he's losing a hell of a lot of games that I would listen. Carl knows how much I hate Daniel Levy. Yeah. Carl's probably known me for, I don't know, maybe a decade since the Twitter days, maybe.
Yeah.
Right. And the crap I used to take back then for saying how bad Daniel Levy was. Same thing I'm saying now about Ange. But at the end of the day, based on what this man's done, what other managers have done at Celtic, like what.
So to be fair, Martin O'Neill is one of the only managers to have a better win percentage. However, when you look at his loss percentage at Celtic, there's better managers in between. So you can tell again, he does lose a lot of games. So the reason why I'm thinking that, and I'm thinking that in the sense of, I've seen look, you see the stats I brought up earlier. I've seen enough on the football pitch, personally in my mind, on what I've seen on the football pitch to go, if there was a more of a consistency coming from the top down and it started to regulate on the pitch, because I don't think all of this, what we're talking about, the inconsistency, is Ange's problem, because we were suffering this before, right? Conte's, I remember we were moaning about Conte's subs even when he was here, right? Mm-hmm. I know Conte's a complete better manager, right? But it's his football and everything like that. So I'm living in a complete dream world, right? I'm not basing it off any stats. I'm going to sit there and say this to you. I'm basing it off a feeling and a hunch, right? Because I look at what Arteta and Klopp have done. Do I think Ange could do it too if he was given the funds and possibility? But I wouldn't say he was the only one. I would say any manager coming. I would say Conte, Mourinho, and Postecoglou. Not Postecoglou, Pochettino. If they had a different chairman, I think they would have been more successful at Tottenham.
Sure, but can we? Let's be honest, right? First of all of this basing comparisons against Arteta. Arteta's not done anything
either. Yeah, to be honest,
Arteta's not done anything.
Yeah. But he's brought that fan base together because he brought that. In the last 2 years, that's what with us right now. I see us where a lot of them were with Wenger. They were completely split. And
when people talk about Klopp and him in the same sentence, I think it's quite offensive.
It's only because I saw it today. Yeah, it's only because I saw it today. So otherwise, I'd be comparing it to someone else. And that's
sent to me as well. But I mean, I think when Jurgen Klopp went to Liverpool, I think we've got to remember Jurgen Klopp was already an established top class manager that had won things in top leagues. Ange is very different. Now, listen, as I said, I'm not here to change anyone's mind. I don't turn around and go, oh my God, I hate Liam. I've streamed with Liam. Liam wants Ange in. He's rubbish. I hate him. But not at all.
He likes you.
I'm just giving my opinion, and it really upsets a lot of people, which I find I truly find baffling. At the end of the day, Marlon, I'll take you back to this time last year. Yeah, right? Very different. 10 points clear, top of the league, right? Sorry, not 10 points clear. 10 points clear of where we are now. So we won 8, drawn 2, lost 1. We're sitting top of the table, right? Yeah. And every Spurs YouTuber, the same YouTubers that are having a pop at me now, you're not a real fan. Get on board with a project. We're in a title race. We're going to win the league. And I stood firm and I said, we're going to be nowhere near winning that title. Oh, you doubter. I said, it's not about that. It's about, like Sam said, I'm old. I've seen this before.
I didn't say that.
No, I know
you said granddad. That counts.
I've seen this before, right? I've seen this before. We get very, very excited and again, I don't blame the fan base for this because we've had no success, right? We literally, if any of you have ever seen Eddie Murphy and Raw, right? You know when he said, if you're hungry and someone throws you a cracker, that's the best damn meal you've ever eaten. That's Tottenham. Tottenham have a win against Villa and we go, oh my God, oh my God. Earlier in the day, half the fan base is saying Villa are shit and we should beat them anyway. Now we've beaten them. It's, oh my God, we're amazing. So we do this quite a lot, right? We do this quite a lot. For me, as I've said, Marlon, you know my opinion. I need to see some consistency. And this manager, the reason why I don't rate him at the moment is it's this. And for me to see green shoots that it's getting better, it's not, oh my God, we win the next game. Because you know what will happen. If the next game we win, it will change and it's got to be in the league, go on a 7, 8, 9 game run without losing a game. Yeah. Go and win. You'd have to win 9, win 6, draw 3. And we sit there and go, okay, all right, there's some consistency. But what happens is we win a game, lose to Palace, win a game, lose to Ipswich. And that for me isn't the makings of a good team. That isn't the makings of a team that are improving. That is the makings of what I would expect from a manager in year 1. In year 1, I get that. But this is the same 11 as last year, Marlon. There's no excuse when people say, oh, it's a new team, they're gelling. It's not a new team. It's only Solanke who's joined, right? Yeah, they should be well drilled at the back. We shouldn't be making these silly mistakes. We shouldn't be letting crosses in each, all of this stuff, right? So when I see that sorted out, I'll turn around and go, I'm wrong. This is a very good manager who's going to take us places. But so far, it's not turned out that way, Marlon. So far, we're halfway towards last season's defeat column already. And we're in November.
And which is concerning because obviously we've got Manchester City next, right? And Fulham are on form. So we could have defeat number, is it 6 and 7?
We're going to beat City, right? And then we're going to lose.
And then lose. I forget. Couldn't be more obvious.
No, do you know what? The only thing I'd say about it is this is the first. If City were on form, I'd probably agree with you lot. I'd probably sit there and go, yeah. But City haven't won a game in 4. This is their first home game since they beat Southampton. And the way we're carrying on, I can't see it. I just really can't see it.
The next 5 games, Marlon, I think are going to be decisive in Ange's reign. Mm-hmm. Because you look at all those fixtures and I sit there and say, I think there's a real possibility we could come out of that 5-game run, including Roma in the Europa League, without a win.
So just to put it in perspective, we've got Manchester City away, and then we've got Roma at home, we've got Fulham at home, we've got Bournemouth away, who have just beat Man City and Arsenal. Knowing us, we'll probably go there and win. And then we've got Chelsea, and then Rangers, and that's a very tough run-in. Like I said, one of my predictions for this season was that Ange would get sacked by Christmas, right? And a lot of people laughed at me, right? And they were like, I know I say a lot of crazy things, but that was the most craziest thing that I could have said. But now looking at it, it could be coming true, because if he comes out of that without a win, I'm just going to ask you, Liam, because you've been the most positive with this situation. But if he was to come out of that with no wins, would you expect a change?
No.
Go on, why?
That's outrageous. Yeah. I know it's going to be outrageous.
No, so explain, because this is what you're here for. Explain your reasoning.
Yeah. So when Ange Postecoglou joined the club, I always said he has 2 years. That was what I stuck with. He has 2 years, then I'll judge his performance. And the fact is, if we're in all competitions, my big thing this season was performing well in cups. I want us to win something. I've been supporting Spurs since around sort of 2007, 2006, right? So I was fairly young at that point. I only got into football at that age. And to see one cup in my entire life when I was so young is absolutely outrageous in my head. And I want to see our club actually win something, because I think winning breeds a culture of winning. And also, I'm very against switching managers mid-season. I really don't like doing that. I don't think it served us previously in previous seasons very well. Switching to Conte, switching to Jose, we had a bounce which has benefited the manager initially. Benefited the club. So we've maybe got into top four, we've got into these type of positions, but then we've then had this slump because we've been too reactive. So ultimately, I want to see this. If it was going to end, fine, depart at the end of the season or depart just towards the end of the season. So giving the new manager time, give him a transfer window, give him a chance. Not okay. Let's chuck him in. Let's give him all the old players. Let's then judge him based on half this season, and then let's give him the whole of the next season, and then repeating our mistakes over and over and over again.
That's not quite true. That's not quite true, Liam. Sorry.
You don't think?
Sorry, I'm going to pull you up on it. Facts again.
Sure.
When you said changing managers halfway through a season hasn't served us well, I can give you 5 or 6 seasons where it's served us very, very well. I mean, we sacked one day Ramos and brought in Harry Redknapp, and that started a 4-year cycle of brilliant football. We sacked Nuno, brought in Antonio Conte, and he got us to 4th place in the league.
What did we win?
Huh?
What did we win?
But that could be the answer for any season at Tottenham Hotspur, couldn't it?
Well, that's my point.
Win?
Any of my seasons, anyway.
Like if that's going to be the answer to every question, then we would never sack a manager in our life. But the thing is,
Ava, can I just back you up on that quickly, just Liam? So there was one that happened. Martin Jol got sacked, even though none of us wanted. He brought in one day Ramos, and we won a cup.
Yeah.
So I get what you're saying, and I do agree. But Sava is right in the sense of sacking a manager during the season has served us well for that
I'm
season.
not saying it doesn't have an effect. I just want to be clear
it's the
about
season
that.
after. It's the season after when we start going through the bumps up and down.
Yeah.
Is where the problem lies. And actually,
But also, Marlon, just because you don't want to go through the churn of another manager, what's the alternative? What, we just sit with a manager that isn't doing a good job just because we don't want to sack someone? We don't want to sack someone. Yeah. We don't want to go through the churn of the new manager process again. That's just sit with this guy then. It's not working. It's not going to work. But sit with him because we don't want to be seen to be sacking the guy. You can't do it. We know the ball are not going anywhere anytime soon. Daniel Levy's not going anywhere. So the only option we've got to change things if they're not working is to change the manager again. That's just going to be how it's going to be. And like I say, I think this 5-game run could potentially be the end of Ange, especially as well, if in that Man City game, defending the way we've been defending recently, if we're on the end of a 5 or 6-0 drubbing and a humiliation in that game, and then those games following that are just as bad and we don't pick up any points, I don't see what alternative you've got. Because he'll have lost the players by then as well.
Yeah,
because players will only follow you while you're winning football matches. The minute the players see this guy's killing me, they'll want him
6 from 12, Cole. If we lose to Man City, it will be 6 from 12. Yeah. And the thing is, don't make no mistakes about it. When we're all, and again, I'm going to get called a Man City fan here, but this we've seen Man City have
Spurs channels then, Sava.
Man, we're half and half scarves.
Yeah, half scarves. Yeah. You've got to remember that Man City. Carl Walker said it in his interview after the game that they lost the other night. Did any of you see that on Sky Sports?
Yeah,
and Carl Walker turned around and said, "If ever a club needed the international break, it's us." Right? And what he said, Pep said, when they come back from the international break, they're going to have Stones fit, Diaz fit, Grealish fit, Doku fit. De Bruyne is going to be 2 weeks further into his fitness, and all of their defeats, none of them have been at the Etihad. So we should be worried going there, right? I know people go, "Oh, don't worry, support your team." It's not about supporting my team. It's about Man City are bloody good. And let's not be fooled by the fact that they're in a bad run of form, right? If we go there and get spanked, we've got some really tough games after that. How long? I guess my question to Liam is then, just hypothetically, how long do you stay with a manager that's not performing just because we don't want the upheaval of changing a manager? The Man U fans are ecstatic that they've changed their manager. The Man U fans are, their fan base went from complete meltdown to, oh my God, we've got Ruben Amorim overnight. So how long would you let it go on for, Liam? What has to happen for him to get the sack?
That's a very good question. Yeah, very good question.
Yeah, that's fine. So, firstly, one of the things I was very keen about was trying to prepare the next manager. So, whoever the next manager is, if we decided we're going to get rid of him, we're not making a reactive decision. We are committed to this manager. We're not going for our fourth choice option in Nuno, for example, or however choice option that was. We get our first choice. That would be my primary objective. But what would have to happen? Well, firstly, we'd have to be knocked out of the competitions that we are apparently going to win. So we'd have to be locked out of the League Cup, obviously the FA Cup and the Europa League. Additionally, obviously, if we're in any type of relegation battle, obviously there needs to be a change. We can't get. Obviously, we're not going to get relegated, but that can't happen. What I would like to see is a smooth transition. If it's going to happen, it's planned, it's calculated. It's not a reactionary one to get the fans hyped up. I'm not saying Ruben Amorim's a bad manager, because I think he's a really good manager, but I don't want our club going out there and getting some manager that's going to get an instant reaction, which is then going to fall apart again next season. I want a plan. And
isn't that what's happened with Ange? Isn't that what's happened? What you're describing is what you're backing. So at the moment, you've got a bit of an oxymoron going on here. You've just described what you don't want to happen, but you're backing what has exactly just happened. So which one is it, Liam? Which one is it? You've put yourself in a corner.
Not quite. So in terms of Ange, when they signed him, firstly, the club was in a different place in terms of what I feel transitionally we're at. For example, our sporting director was being suspended. We've got a new sporting director since then. Additionally, I feel in terms of the squad itself, we still had a lot of old players that we need to get rid of. We've had a lot of departures since Ange has joined. Additionally, you can sign a manager and he can not be as good as you think he is. That's okay. In terms of, you could admit that. You could admit that, okay, maybe he wasn't as good as maybe he wasn't that guy Segos at its level. It doesn't mean that the aspect of building a project is wrong. It just means maybe he wasn't as good as you thought he was. And that's okay to admit. Now, not everyone's going to be as good as you think he's going to be.
What project? There's another buzzword. What project?
In terms of building the club, we know that we're not going to go out there and sign. We know we're not going to go out there and sign £100 million players. It's not going to happen.
No one mentioned £100 million players. What project? Whenever people say project process, I'm really keen. No one can actually answer me what this is. What project?
Sure. So, from a club point of view, I think generally the project is to sign young and to try and develop those players into first team players without having to make big signings and basically have them sign from a young player from a young age and to play a certain way of football as well as to win. And I guess those three are very difficult to marry up.
Do you know why they're difficult to marry up?
Why? Because it requires experience to win, obviously quality to win.
Liam, because it's a load of nonsense that doesn't work. Again, this is the problem, Liam, right? When we sit and we talk about projects, I hear this, I've heard this phrase being chucked out. We're 18 months in now to project. Fans call something a project when things are going wrong. Whenever things are going wrong, it's a project. When Unai Emery went into Aston Villa, no Villa fan was calling it a project. Unai Emery went in from day one, they did well. Right? From day one, they did well when Unai Emery went in there. Right? The Brighton manager's gone in. They're not calling it a project. They're just doing well. They're just getting on with it. At Spurs, we're calling it a project. What we actually mean by project is we've signed loads of 18-year-olds that don't actually play. So to your point about bringing in young players that we improve and grow, they're not playing in the first team. They're not getting a minute of football in the Premier League. So by project, what we actually mean is we've signed young kids so that we can slash the wage bill, because there's no project. This is the same team as last season. There's no, what's the project?
I disagree in a sense that you can, well, firstly, they are getting minutes. Whether or not they are the right minutes, that could be debated, but it is, Archie Gray is getting minutes, not that many, and he's not getting played in his correct position, but he is getting some minutes. He should probably be getting more. But you'd also argue if he's starting.
So that's the project.
Sorry?
That's the project, to give 18-year-olds minutes in outside of their positions in Europe. That is that the project?
No, I don't think that is the project. But I think it's difficult to marry up having a first team that you want to start, as well as giving obviously younger players a chance to play. If, say, they played younger players every single game, or maybe I don't personally agree with aspects of the way Ange just managed the squad. I think the younger players should be coming on later in games. I obviously emphasised that earlier when we were talking.
Yeah.
But I also think that there's expectations of the club that obviously the club wants us to get top four. Every fan wants us to be competing. Now, how do you get to that point? And of course, you play your best players. And I would arguably say that is what Ange is trying to do. He has been dropping players. If they've not been performing, he's generally been dropping them. Could he have dropped other players? Yes.
Okay, but can I ask, off the back of that though, again, this is what I can't make work in my head. And sorry, Marlon, but I can't make this work in my head. On the one hand, we use the word project a lot. On the other hand, we're acknowledging that the young players he's brought in aren't playing. So that's not a project. Let's look at Brighton and Chelsea, right? Brighton and Chelsea have brought in loads of 20, 19, 21-year-old, 22-year-olds, and they're playing them all, right? They're playing them all. You look at Brighton's team that played the other day against Man City. 3 of their midfield 4 were 21 and under, right? They had an 18-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 21-year-old. They then brought on Belieber, who was 20 in the second half. They then brought on, in the second half, was it Moda or Gerda or someone?
Yeah.
Right. They had Rutter up front, who's only 22. So you could look at Brighton and go, all right, they're buying the younger players, but they're playing them. Cool. That's a youth project. What I get the feeling we're doing, Liam, is because we're not buying proper senior pros to come into this club, we're scrimping out, right? And that's shown by how much money we saved. We saved £30 million in wages this summer. So what we're doing is we're buying young players. Then what fans are doing is confusing that with a youth project. Then when those youth players don't play, we're still saying, yeah, but it's a young team. Tottenham don't have a young team. This myth that do you think we've got a young team?
In certain positions, yeah.
Right, in certain positions, but across the 11, is it a young side?
We have
young
extremes. We have extremely young players and we have very old players.
Who's extremely young?
Gray.
So
Odegaard.
Doesn't play. Who?
Odegaard.
Okay, Odegaard's 20 and not played, but go on.
Bergvall. Well, they are playing.
Can I ask a question?
They're not. This is the difference. They're not playing. This is what we're doing. When we're talking about we've got an extremely young team, not in the league we don't. Our goalkeeper's 26. Our right back's 25. Sorry, our goalkeeper's 28. Our right back's 25. Romero's 26 or 27, whatever he is. All right, Mickey van der Ven's 23, but he's been a pro for a long time, and Adogi's 20. Adogi's young.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you that. When you look in the midfield, look at Basuma's 28. Bentoncourt's 27, 28. James Maddison's 27, 28. Timo Werner's 30, whatever he is. Right? Sonny's 31, 32. Dominic Solanke's 27. Right? Them players that we're bringing on. This team, we're convincing ourselves that this is a young team that's growing. It's not that young. It's not young at all. We're actually one of the only clubs that aren't playing their young players. We were 4-0 up in a game the other day against someone. I can't even remember who it was. 4-0 up at home. And everyone's going, right, half an hour to go. Where's Bergvall for 30 minutes? Gray for 30 minutes? Lancashire for 30? No, he's bringing on Bentoncourt. He's bringing on Werner. You know why? Because it's not a youth project. A youth project, and I said this earlier in our group, Carl, a youth project to me is whether or not, Liam, whether me or you agree with it is different, right? But if the club turned around and said, this is a youth project, we're going to buy young players, we're going to build and grow as a team for 4 or 5 years. We can all argue, does it work? Blah, blah, blah. I don't like it. You like it. Blah. We can do that. Surely, if we're going to do that, you turn around and say, Ben Davies, thanks very much for everything you've done. We're going to move you on, mate. We don't need you. We're going to have Ashley Phillips in the squad instead, right? Werner, we don't need you back. You're getting on. We don't need you. We're just going to play Odebert, right? Surely you would say, Richarlison, we don't want to keep you because you're getting on a bit. We're just going to have Lancashire. Sonny, thanks for everything. We're going to play the kids, and then we go, right, we're not doing well. We're up and down, but it's a youth project. But we haven't. We've kept the same team, not played the kids, and then fans say, but it's a youth project, and I see what we're doing with the project. Project is a word for lack of ambition.
It's
Project
the greatest. It's the
word for
greatest.
lack of ambition.
It's the greatest brainwash that's been
Absolutely.
happening for many years on Enix's part, isn't it?
Do you know what? It's not just Enoch, because it's not just us, because it must be just a North London thing, because them lot down the road are probably exactly the same as us, and this is where we are very similar, because they talk about a process. They've been talking about a process under Arteta for how many years, and yes, the process is taking place, but the trophies are not there, so they're still talking about this process, and we end up talking about projects. Is it a case of here that the North London clubs, both of us, are just brainwashed by what our clubs are feeding us? Because, before Arteta came in, they wanted their ball out. But now they're kind of like we are. When we get a new manager, we kind of stop and go, oh, here we go. We've got a shiny new toy to play with for a while. Is that kind of where we're at? So, but yeah, Sava, brilliant, mate. Absolutely brilliant tonight. I'm so sorry. So sorry.
I just try and break things down.
No.
I see too many things. I go on channels and I watch people talk about Spurs, and I just see throwaway comments like young team, project, process, trust this. When you break it down, none of these things are actually happening. It's the same team as last year with Dominic Solanke, and I'm being brainwashed by other fans to tell me that don't worry, they're young. They're not young. This isn't a youth project. Do you know what? When we did our thing today, we looked at, there were times down the years where we bought Carl Walker, Aaron Lennon, we bought Huddleston, Andy Reid, Michael Dawson. These were youth projects.
Beginning of
We actually bought these young players, we put them in the 11 and we played them. Now we're buying these young players. People are raving about all summer. Everyone was wetting their knickers about these young players. Everyone watching them beat Hearts and QPR and going, oh my God, he's generational. Oh my God, our squad is so much better. The facts are, we got rid of lots of senior pros and everyone's praising it. We got rid of Deadwood, didn't replace any of them. We didn't replace any of them. And we're going to pretend it's a youth project. Listen, I've seen all this before. I've heard these excuses for 30, 40 years. It's just the same thing wrapped up with a different manager, a different director of football, a different... Isn't it, Cole? Am I going mad?
No, like you say, Sava, it's the same old thing, just in different packaging and spun to convince the next generation as such. So, yeah, it's been no different. And ultimately, as a fan base, we've been so starved of signing real quality players that now we have to get so excited when you bring in one of these young players, because you're not bringing in a proven player that's going to get you off your seat.
So true. And on that note, I'm going to end it there, because I don't want to go too long and everyone's had their point of view and hopefully everyone's got out. I'm going to start with Liam first. Liam, thank you so much for coming on. I needed you as backup. And look, I'm hoping that, you've learnt all of us and you've enjoyed your time tonight.
It's interesting hearing different people's opinions, and I appreciate that. Yeah, we don't always agree, but I know buzzwords, etc. But yeah, it's part of the fun, right?
Look, at the end of the day, look, we've disagreed, we've agreed, we've disagreed, and everything like that. But none of us have gone personal on each other.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And we've look, we're all smiling and whatnot, and hopefully the audience have seen what a great show it is. So, but Liam, I can't thank you enough. Please make sure you go over. Is that your Twitter handle? And please go over and search for Liam Talks Ball. I will put it in the description after this show as well for his YouTube channel. Sam, thank you again for coming on tonight. Again, it's been an absolute pleasure. Please let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, well, my Twitter handle's there, and tomorrow, either 6 or 7, I'm doing my weekly panel show with the Irish Hotspur. So we'll just be discussing again probably the last 2 games and what's next. I'm sure we'll probably get into Ange as well. I've really enjoyed it. I've seen a lot of Savage stuff, but I've not actually been on a video, so I was quite excited when I saw the lineup of who I was coming on with. Same with you, Carl. I've enjoyed your input, and Liam. Obviously, we've done it before, so and I follow you on Twitter, so I see your positivity, and it does at times bring me out of the slump that I find myself in when I'm trolling through Twitter and seeing Ange out. Ange is the best thing ever. You're a this, you're a that. So it's nice to see all the different opinions. The chat's been going pretty ham tonight. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
So it is interesting. Like sometimes it's hard to kind of keep up with both, but you see the occasional comments and you're like, I agree with that, or that's very outlandish. And as you say, we're all smiling. So that is what it is. At the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We want success for the club, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what's come out of this chat. We've actually, even though there's been disagreements here and there, I think we can all agree we just want the same thing. Carl, let people know where they can find you, and again, thank you for coming on tonight.
No, Marlon, absolute honour, and my Twitter handle is there as well, and obviously over at that Spurs podcast. We just started, not been going very long, so looking forward to getting on this journey and hopefully doing a bit more with each and every one of you. But yeah, it's been a blast tonight, mate.
No problem. And don't forget, you do our previews as well now.
You do your previews on Spurs Kings, yeah. So we got 10 days to stew on that result against Ipswich, and then I'm not looking forward to doing that Man City preview, to be honest, Marlon, but we'll get it over the line.
And then Sava, I can't thank you enough. I know that we not started on a bad note, but obviously something's been released in why we've been streaming, which is probably not the best way to start the stream. And someone's released a video about you. But Sava, no, thank you very much for coming on tonight. Even with that in the back of your head, like obviously, absolutely great with us. So all I can say is thank you very much. Thanks for being the co-host as well with me, with Ash missing because it's his birthday. He's got a minute left. Oh, that's it now. It's over. Screw you, Ash. But no, thank you. Please,
thank you. I apologise. I was on one a bit tonight. Just I literally, as your video intro was playing, someone said, "Have you seen this?" And I'm like, oh, do you know, I just don't get it. Listen, apologies. Listen, Sam, Liam, sorry, apologies. Wasn't my greatest night, but I've loved chatting football with you. I honestly am a nice person. I'm just frustrated right now. But thank you, and lovely to meet you guys. And Carl, as always.
Let everyone know what's coming up on your channel for the next week as well, just so people that are not about and the new ones.
Yeah, we've got a couple of Arsenal watch-alongs coming up at the weekend, rewatching Arsenal games and also a few Man City ones. I don't know, man. It's weird, isn't it? International break. I find it quite hard to
get time of year.
To be honest, I'll have a couple of videos coming out, and I'm actually going to start working on another platform as well, doing some watch-alongs for games that aren't Spurs. So after tonight, I can't believe I've just said that. But yeah, listen, thank you.
No,
thank you. Yeah,
I can't thank you enough. To everyone on the panel, I can't thank you enough. Thank you for helping me out tonight without my other co-host, Ash. And obviously, he'll be doing these stats and things and what happened against Ipswich next week. So we're going to save that till next week. Just to let you know as well, the rival show will be tomorrow and Ash will be presenting it. So, he's not given a full week off, but he'll be back tomorrow with the rival show, which, to be honest, I don't think he's looking forward to because they all won and Spurs lost. And also, we've got a video that's going to be coming out Saturday or Sunday. And I've got a bunch of YouTubers, right? And Sava's included on this and whatnot. And we're just going to discuss what basically Ange's tenure and what will Ange be successful at Spurs. So watch out for that video dropping on Saturday. We've had some interesting ones coming so far. I've got an all-star lineup as well coming in that. So that video is going to drop on Saturday. But obviously, we'll be back next week, next Tuesday with Ash. Sava, thank you very much. You've been great and absolutely brilliant. You don't have to apologise to any of us because you've been respectful and everything like that. You're an absolute gent. Cole, thank you as always. Sam, brilliant, and Liam, thank you very much for coming on tonight as well. But as always, come on, you Spurs, and I've completely forgot to do the outro, which I will do now.